it. One quiet evening that was supposed to be nothing more than harmless laughter and casual cards ended up becoming the night that split my life cleanly down the middle, because one moment I was relaxed in a friend's living room talking about work and weekend plans, and the next I was watching my wife dismantle our marriage in real time over a poker table. Cards had never really been my thing, no matter how hard my father and uncle tried when I was younger. The rules never stuck, the strategies bored me, and eventually I abandoned everything, except the occasional game of solitaire. But Sarah was different. Cards were her comfort zones, her confidence space. The one place she felt sharp and in control. And while she wasn't some legendary professional player, she had a natural edge. The kind that made her dangerous in friendly games. And she'd built a tight group around that shared passion. People she trusted, people she won against often enough to feel respected. And that night at Ben and Linda S. house on the outskirts of Austin was supposed to be just another gathering of that circle. Ben and Linda had always been generous hosts, their home warm and familiar, and the usual faces were there. Mike, Tom, Chris, Ryan, the wives, drifting between conversations while the guys shuffled chips and joked loudly. And I didn't feel out of place sitting with Jessica and Erica talking about deadlines, family drama, the small harmless things couples talk about when time stretches late, and I assumed Sarah would eventually wander in smiling and announce it was time to head home. But instead, what drifted in from the kitchen was a strange sound, rhythmic, almost ceremonial. Voices low and focused in a way that didn't feel like a normal game, and curiosity pulled me to my feet before my brain could catch up. And when I stepped into the kitchen, the image hit me so hard, it felt like the air had been knocked from my chest. Because Sarah wasn't standing at the table laughing or arguing over a hand, she was on her knees in front of Tom. His belt undone, the table crowded with men who looked more frozen than shocked. And instinct took over before reason had a chance to speak. My hands grabbing, my voice tearing through the room as I shoved Tom back and pulled Sarah away, demanding an explanation that didn't exist. But while Mike stumbled through words about bets and raises and rules, like any of that could justify what I was seeing, and Sarah tried to sound calm, tried to explain odds and confidence and how she'd miscalculated, how she believed she'd win, how this was just the consequence of a bad gamble. But nothing she said reached me, because all I could hear was the sound of something sacred breaking, and when I demanded we leave, she refused. Not angrily, but firmly, insisting that backing out would mean exile from the table, from the group, from the identity she'd built there, and that refusal hurt more than the scene itself. Because it meant that even while I was standing there shaking, she had already made her choice, and when I reached for her again, she stepped away, and when she asked the others to help, the room shifted from disbelief to betrayal as hands grabbed my arms, restraining me like I was the problem, and I begged, pleaded, humiliated myself, asking her to stop, promising we could forget it, offering any alternative. but she looked at me with an unsettling calm and said she had to honor the bet. And in that moment, something inside me cracked as she returned to her knees, the men holding me tighter until the fight drained out of my body entirely, leaving only numbness. And when I finally walked out, alone, hoping she'd follow, praying she'd come to her senses, the night air felt colder than it should have, and the drive home barely registered, muscle memory guiding me while my mind replayed the scene over and over. And by the time I reached the house, I knew I couldn't stay, not even for a night. So I packed in silence until Sarah returned, her frustration more present than remorse, reducing what happened to a misunderstanding, a technicality, a game gone wrong. And when she dismissed my pain as exaggeration, something fundamental shifted, because it wasn't just about what she did. It was about watching her choose pride and belonging over me while I begged her not to. And when I left for the hotel downtown, it felt like stepping into a future I never planned, days passing in a fog of work and sleepless nights, ignoring her apologies because they never touched the core of what was broken. Until Jessica and Erica approached me at a bar, guilt written all over them as they tried to explain shock and paralysis. And while I understood fear, I couldn't forgive silence, not when it helped turn a marriage into a spectacle. And though they urged me to talk to Sarah, to reconsider, I knew something irreversible had already happened. And 2 days later, I filed for divorce. Not out of spite, but out of swift preservation, and the speed with which Sarah signed hurt more than resistance ever could, reinforcing the quiet fear that losing me mattered less than losing face. And the emptiness that followed the final papers surprised me, because closure didn't bring peace, only quiet, until one evening at a familiar bar where our story had once begun, Sarah appeared again, softer, shaken, and finally honest, confessing that the game wasn't just a game, that the thrill, the control, the fear of exclusion had become an addiction she hadn't recognized until it cost her everything. And as she spoke about counseling, meetings, and facing the ugliness inside herself, I felt anger mix with compassion, because accountability changes the weight of regret. And while forgiveness didn't come easily, it didn't feel impossible anymore. And when she stood to leave, I realized that despite everything, there was still something unfinished between us, something fragile but real. And asking her to stay for dinner wasn't a promise, it was a pause, a chance to see if healing could exist after betrayal. And rebuilding wasn't fast or easy, but commitment replaced arrogance, humility replaced excuses. And though the scars remain, they no longer define us. Because sometimes the worst night of your life doesn't end a story, it rewrites it.